Welcome to our next topic in XML design. This week we're talking about the validity of an XML document, and part of that will include adding DTDs to the document. First, let's talk about the importance of validation. This ensures that data is correct before feeding it into the program. It also ensures that a format is followed and establishes what must be supported. Now you need to remember that not all documents need to be valid. Sometimes just being well formed, which we talked about last time, is enough. To be valid, an XML document must be well formed. It must have a doc type declaration specifying a document type definition or DTD, and it must comply with the constraints specified within that DTD. So when we talk about DTDs and validity, validation compares the document against your DTD, and well-formedness is a prerequisite for validity. Now, what is a document type definition? Let's go over that. A document type definition lists the elements, attributes, and entities as they may appear in an XML document and how they're related to each other. It lays out permissible tags and structure of the document, and it may be stored as part of the XML document, or it can be a separate file. DTDs can either be internal or external. You might want to use internal DTDs for entity definitions, and we see an example here. It would start as a doc type line. So you see the less than sign, an exclamation point, and then the word doc type, then the name of your root element, and enclosed in square brackets will be your internal data subset, or the name of your child elements. If you're using an external DTD for validation, again, you're going to use the same kind of doc type line with the name of your root element, and then perhaps the word system, followed by, in double quotation marks, the name of your DTD file or the web address of it. And in these kind of documents, line breaks and extra white space do not have a significant effect on DTDs as they do in other parts of XML. Here's an example of a valid song document. We see first your XML declaration and then the doc type DTD declaration, and it says it applies to the system for things called song, where the root element is song, and it's in a file named song.dtd. And then after that we see the parts of the XML root element and the child elements within song. Here's what the external DTD would look like. We see element song and then list of the sub-elements within it. And in the lines following, we have a line declaring what each kind of data is included in that child element. Be PC data is what is all displayed here. We see when you get down to the element length, and we see then a comment for referring to the next element year, reminding the user that it should be a 4-digit year, not a 2-digit year. And if you're using an internal DTD subset, here's how it might be added to XML document. The doc type comes right after your XML declaration and lists very similar things as we saw in the last example. And here we see that when you're validating using your DTD, the document must comply with the constraints specified within the DTD. It has to include your root element. And underneath we have an example of an invalid DTD. We see the XML declaration and then the doc type line with looking for the root element greeting, and applies to the whole system, and an external greeting.dtd file. And yet the root element listed in the XML document is foo. So this is not valid since the root element is not the same. Now there are a couple of different ways to check validity for your XML documents. You pass the document through a validating parser, which should report any errors it finds. Now there are command line validators, which is software you can download and install on your computer, like the one listed from the GNOME project at xmlsoft.org. And then you would go to your computer's command line and enter a line similar to the one there. There are also web-based validators that are listed in the textbook and on our class materials. Sorry about that interruption. Validity is not always sufficient when we're trying to get our XML documents to work. DTDs cannot specify anything about the contents of an element, say that an element must contain a number or it must contain a date, or that the date given has to be between specific years. And you can use custom validation layers to sit on top of your XML validation that can take care of this. And schemas will add to this, and we'll talk about schemas in the weeks to come. Now when we look at the concept of well-formedness versus validity, well-formed documents are correct with or without a DTD, that they adhere to the basic syntax rules of XML. Valid documents also adhere to the constraints specified within a DTD, and all valid documents are well-formed, but not all well-formed documents are valid. And there may be times when you want to compromise on validity. Validity is optional, and when you're considering validity on your document, you might want to ask yourself, does this document contain the information I need? As opposed to asking something like, does this document not contain anything I don't need? And validation can determine which process should handle any given document. And the one final area of validation is humans can count as process for this purpose.
Let me know if you have any questions. You can go ahead and post them on the discussion board. And good luck for the week's work. Thank you. Bye.